Pour yourself a cold one.
Let's drink them, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it is Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented by FantasyPoints.com. Use that code FEAST, all caps, so you get all the good stuff, Greg Cosell and more over there. And maybe more importantly, you get to go against me and Joe Dolan in our July Best Ball 10 draft. I'm 14 picks in to our June Best Ball 10 draft. I'm pretty sure I'm going to win. I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point. Everybody else could just quit. You guys can't beat me. So you probably shouldn't even go to fantasypoints.com and use the code FEAST, all caps, and try to go against me in the league, because you're not going to be able to beat me. Anyway, I mentioned it. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, at Ross Tucker NFL, Twitter and the Gram. It could be IG, Insta, whatever the cool thing is to call it now. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL and all that stuff. And Facebook, facebook.com/Ross Tucker NFL. If you're not already following or liking or whatever, please do. You can find all of our shows over at RossTucker.com or at Ross Tucker Pod on Twitter, Instagram. We have a new YouTube page, which for nothing else, you should check out the College Draft, this show, on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, because my co-host on this show, Matt Waldman, looks awesome. He looks awesome. He looks way cooler than I thought he would when you actually see him. He always has this awesome cap on. He's got an awesome chair, this mic in front of him. Matt Waldman is a stud. The black cap goes perfectly with his gray beard. I love it. I mean, all I'd ever known of Matt was a picture. In video, he looks way better than his picture. He looks sweet. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well, Ross. How are you? Did you have a good fourth?
I did, man. Thank you. Yes. Didn't do much on the fourth, other than, if people that follow my social saw it, we made filet and scallops from Butcher Box. Shout out Butcher Box. But then yesterday we had a small family gathering for my daughter's 7th birthday. She turned 7 tomorrow. So that was nice. Always good to try to make a little girl's day special. So it was really nice. How about you?
Oh man, it was good. We just relaxed, chilled out here, and had a nice time. And we don't live far from a fairground, so we get to see fireworks out in our back deck pretty much. So we took that in, and just had a nice weekend overall. So happy birthday to your daughter.
Thank you. I appreciate that. At Matt Waldman is where you can find him on social media. MattWaldmanRSP.com. That's where you get the rookie scouting portfolio. It is a monster. It is a beast. Over 1,200 pages. You talk to NFL teams, NFL scouts, they get it. It's one of the one or two guides that they get that help them at night when they're reading, or to give them a little extra information on players, which is why we love having Matt here on the College Draft Podcast. And this will be our first time, Matt, diving into next year's draft. We kind of just wrapped up every selection of the 2020 draft. You had encyclopedic knowledge of all of those guys. Then we talked a little bit about multiple sports and, the data from guys that compete in track and field last week with Brian Spillbeller of Tracking Football. Now we get into 2021, and we will, of course, start with the quarterbacks. And it's almost weird, Matt. He's only played 2 years of college football, but because of how highly touted he was in high school, because he's been in back-to-back national championship games, it feels like Trevor Lawrence has been playing college football for a lot longer than just his third and true junior year.
Yeah, that's for sure. When you see a guy, really in the limelight the way that he and his team have been, you just kind of get used to that. It was kind of that same way with Tua Tagovailoa. So when you think about Trevor Lawrence, he's a prospect just as good, when you think about the level of scrutiny that he's going to receive over the next year or two, depending on when he decides to come out. But I mean, this is a guy that, has all the physical characteristics that you're looking for from a top quarterback. I mean, the big arm, the velocity, the size, the strength. He's someone that is also a very good runner. I mean, you can use him in ways where he's going to be able to, not only just move the chains for you, but he can be a threat with his legs on certain types of read plays. You can use him on quarterback sweeps if you want to on occasion, and he's going to be able to work past linebackers and even threaten some safeties with his speed. But, as a passer, I mean, think all day long. I mean, this guy has the technique that you're looking for. He has good footwork mechanics that have real flashes of excellence. And it's because when you watch him drop back, I mean, they're pretty clean drops overall. He can get a little bit wide with his drops, but I really like looking at the footwork of a quarterback because I think the footwork matched up with what his eyes see tells you a lot about how well he processes what he sees on the field, because a lot of what you see with footwork is tied to the routes of to the route tree of his receivers and how he pivots into the pocket. So when he gets into situations where, say, defenders get early penetration or pressure into the backfield, to watch him be able to make the quick adjustment, either curtail his drop and be able to slide away, or to be able to climb through pressure, 1 or 2 points of pressure, and find that first or second and sometimes even third read and make the quick adjustment and throw with anticipation. That just tells me a lot of things are integrated with his game, that it's at this point, if the quarterback doesn't have it, it's going to be hard to teach. And the fact that he already has those things, I really like. The only thing that I've seen with him that is consistent with maybe his feet and his eyes not being in sync is with the kind of the intermediate skinny post. When he reads certain types of leverage with the coverage, he doesn't always see that as well or as quickly as you'd like, and he can be 1 to 2 beats on that one throw. Otherwise, when I watch this guy's game, I mean, it's hard not to think of a guy in style like Andrew Luck in terms of just the size and strength, the athletic ability, the way that he kind of sees the field, the fact that he can hold safeties in the middle of the field, that he has a good idea of where his receiver is, and he can come back to the middle or the right. He can pivot and throw from the pocket very well. To me, this is just a guy that if anything is just more of the very advanced ways of looking at the field and being able to, process information so quickly that as soon as he pivots or hits his foot in the ground, the ball needs to come out based on how he reads the leverage. That's the only thing that's sometimes missing with his game. Otherwise, he may be the top quarterback in this particular draft class if he continues along the trajectory we've seen thus far.
It's interesting because a couple things. One is I got a chance to meet with him and watch him perform at the U.S. Army Bowl a couple years ago. And, all the high school recruiting and scouting gurus all said he was the best prospect they had graded in like a decade from a high school level. He was just that good in every way in high school. I didn't realize he was that athletic, that he could run that well. I mean, he basically won the Ohio State game in the semifinals of the college football playoff by running as much as anything. I mean, he had some serious wheels in that game, which I think is really important because as we see some of these guys, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, most notably, of course, Lamar Jackson, I think more and more teams, they don't need to use it a lot, but they'd like to have that threat. They'd like to have that element, whether it's the zone read stuff or other quarterback-centric run plays. And just knowing that he has it in him can really be an asset. So Lawrence has been the guy for a couple of years. The other guy that really emerged in a major way last year is another high school quarterback from Georgia, who also doesn't play for the Georgia Bulldogs. He plays for Ohio State, and I'm talking about Justin Fields, the former Georgia Bulldog who transferred.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We're going to be talking about a lot of guys from Georgia on this podcast, it seems like. And Fields is one of them. He's just not, he grew up not far down the road from where I live, north of Atlanta, in an area called Kennesaw, Georgia. And, this is a guy that has, again, like Lawrence, has the size, has the arm strength, has the speed, has the base technique that you're looking for, oftentimes from top prospects. And this is someone who delivers excellent placement under pressure, much like Lawrence when it comes to throwing the ball with anticipation down the field. He's not afraid to let his receiver go up and win the football, which is that kind of confidence you want when you're throwing to top athletes, in the Big Ten or in the SEC and or the ACC, any of the big conferences. And he's a player that also has the skill to be able to climb from pressure. But if you let him break that pocket, just like Trevor Lawrence, he has that burst. He has the movement to be able to make the first man miss and then be able to take the play, not just move the chains, but to give you big plays. And when you think about how the NFL looks at big plays, they look at 12-yard gains on rushing plays as a big play, or 16-yard gains, I believe, in the passing game. And when they analytically look at those particular plays, those are the cutoffs. And you're going to get a lot of those from, guys like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. And he's the type of guy that has good zone placement in the vertical range of the field. You can see him execute, all the different types of drops that you're looking for that you don't always see from Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, you just in terms of what the Clemson offense asks him to do, you're not seeing always a lot of 5 and 7 step drops. You'll see a few of those from Justin Fields in his game. The difference between the two is I'd say that Justin Fields, while he executes a little bit more variety in terms of drop types and play action types than what you often see from Lawrence, his drop plan needs to be a little quicker. I think that he's someone that has either the last step of his drop, or when he's taking the one-step drop from shotgun or from pistol, and he drags that front foot forward, he can be a little bit of jerky with the drops. He can be a little slow or loping with the drops. And that's important, because when we talked about the importance of that with Trevor Lawrence in terms of your footwork, if you're moving a little bit too up and down as a quarterback, you may not always be able to see very clearly what's happening with the defense in terms of zone, in terms of, players dropping back into zones or making adjustments early post snap. And he sees things well pre-snap. Early post-snap, I think he can get a little bit better. There's plays where he misses, where the safeties, actually coming up to attack a receiver in that intermediate range and shooting forward to cut off, or maybe an underneath defender is going to drop in his zone and undercut plays. And you'll see these situations where, he just misses those. The Clemson game was a good example of that, where he had a couple of interceptions in that game. He could have thrown a couple of more if they weren't dropped by the defensive backs. And he's a guy that can be 1 to 2 beats late, recognizing that leverage versus zone, to where if he has to go to that second read, he doesn't always ID where the zone defender is supposed to be, or anticipate where that zone defender is going to be moving. And that's where he can get into trouble. Again, this is a more advanced concept when you compare the college level to the pro level, but it's something that's going to be expected him to be able to do at the pro level. So I like what I see from him very much, and he's certainly one of the top prospects. But if I were going to compare him to Trevor Lawrence at this stage, I'd give the slightest edge right now in their development to Trevor Lawrence. But this is a really nice quarterback class overall, and Justin Fields isn't the guy that you're going to be upset with, taking at this stage if we were drafting today.
So Justin Fields, I actually watched his high school highlight video, Matt, because I do a local thing here in central Pennsylvania. I do an hour talking Penn State football each week on the Keystone Sports Network. So it's on a bunch of Pennsylvania radio stations, and they podcast that as well. So anytime there's a Penn State commit, I watch his video, and he actually originally committed to Penn State, and his high school highlight video was the most outrageous of any quarterback I've ever seen. Now, I didn't go back and watch Trevor Lawrence's or these other guys, but Justin Fields, first of all, it was crazy how fast he was on the field, but then his arm, like in high school, it was unbelievable. Some of the throws that he would make. Best high school highlight video from a quarterback that I've watched in a long time. Very, very impressive. It's interesting. For the longest time, Matt, we talked about this year's draft class as Trevor Lawrence, tank for Trevor, blah, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden it was, well, hey, Justin Fields is pretty good too. There's a couple of them. But there's more and more of a buzz now for an FCS player who just finished his first year as a starter, Trey Lance from North Dakota State, that just churns out NFL quarterbacks these days and national championships. What did you see from Trey Lance, Matt?
I really like Trey Lance, and I think that if you've heard buzz about him and that he could possibly be a first-round guy to compete with an early spot with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, I believe it. I believe it very much so when you watch his game. And he reminds me of actually one of my favorite players who ever played in the NFL, and that was Steve McNair. And when I think about, and I'll explain a little bit why, but one of the things that just stands out about him, is his footwork. This is a guy that, takes all the drops that you see on a consistent basis, takes a lot of drops from center, operates in an offense that when you think of what the Browns will be doing, what the Minnesota Vikings did last year, man, he'd fit perfectly in those two offenses right now in terms of the type of skills that he has. He operates really well in the play action game, has great play action skills in terms of how he sells the exchange points with different types of exchanges, different types of rolls, throws unbelievably well on the move on designed rolls and bootlegs, either side that he rolls to. And with his drops, one of the things that he does a little bit better than Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields is that he has that little deceleration, that ending at the top of the drop where he really just sticks his feet in the ground and he's in a terrific throwing position to get that ball out. And it's just very smooth, very quick, and he has quicker drops than those two. And so the fact that his feet are crisp, they're precise, and that he can change the drop plan, but he can also really just stick it, with a quick tempo, is something that he's already a little bit ahead of the game technically than those two, with a very important area of footwork. Now, both those guys, Fields and Lawrence, can improve and certainly improve that. It's not something that's hard to improve, but the fact that he's already there is awesome. And he has a nice release that drives the ball pretty well. He can drive it a little further downward than those other guys. You see that. Remember, you look at that with Donovan McNabb. He kind of drove the ball downward a little bit with his release motion at times. Trey Lance has that kind of tendency on short throws on to the perimeter or into the open zones, but he's a guy that has really good intermediate accuracy on the move under pressure. He has terrific form. He can hold safeties, and his placement is just great. Like watching him throw the ball down the field and really show awareness of where the safety is coming across the field or where the coverage is trailing him. He does a great job of putting the ball only where the receiver has a chance to make the play, whether, Lance is throwing on the move or whether he's, throwing from a more platform position in the pocket. He can be a little bit late to read the leverage underneath early on or late in a decision. But he's a guy with also a really strong arm, awesome downfield accuracy, someone who can make multiple reads. He can scramble to buy time for multiple points of pressure, just like Fields and, Lawrence. The difference with him is that I really didn't see him have to really climb the pocket on a consistent basis. But when he's done it, I mean, I've watched probably 9 games of his already, and I only saw one play where he actually had to just climb away from a defender and do it in rhythm with those incremental steps that you need from a quarterback. But he did it. He did it really well. I just want to see a little bit more of that. But he's someone that has, really just, borderline rare skills in terms of what I see from him in terms of movement, throwing the ball with accuracy, and the placement that he shows at this stage of the game. And I think if he continues to have a strong year and you see him do well once again this year on a consistent level, I think that it's going to be hard to hold him back from that tier of Lawrence and Justin Fields.
So those are considered the top 3 guys right now. You hear a lot of talk among all those guys. I would tell you the number 1 ranked thing right now, it's the DraftKings Sportsbook app. DraftKings has brought their expertise to legal sports betting. It's a legitimate sports book based right here in the U.S., so you can rest assured that your funds are totally secure. Oh my goodness, do I hope we have college football to bet on for so many reasons. We also have UFC 251 Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. Obviously, golf continues, soccer continues. People are absolutely loving betting on golf these days. Plus, it's just fun to bet on a fight, and you can do it at DraftKings. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code Ross when you sign up. I literally did this over the weekend. For a limited time, all new users can get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. That's right. DraftKings Sportsbook has a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. Just enter code Ross when you sign up, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or PA only. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. Matt, we were joking earlier about Trevor Lawrence and seeming like he's been there a while. What about Sam Ehlinger at Texas? Now, it really feels like he's been there for a while. What kind of prospect is he?
Yeah, I like him a lot. He probably is the top senior on the board right now in terms of the quarterback class. And this is a guy also smooth, quick setups, high release motion. He's accurate with 3/4 and sidearm delivery. So he has, nice use of being able to do different platforms with his throwing. And when he has time, he scans the width and length of the field. Well, he'll find the open man. He has good timing when it comes to his footwork in terms of hitching and throwing. When he works to those second and third reads, so you can see that he's often in sync with what he does in his offense. I think he feels interior pressure well. He'll maneuver and reset away from it. And he has that skill to fire the ball with accuracy despite pressure bearing down on him. And that's a trait that really all 4 of the quarterbacks that we've talked about thus far share. And he's someone that, I think he's fundamentally sound with his ball security and maneuvering the pocket. He holds the safety well when working deep. I'd just like to see him do a little bit more. And he and Justin Fields can kind of have to both work on this. Is just kind of opening up to a different side of the field a little longer during their drop so that they can manipulate linebackers and safeties and then finish their drop turning towards the first read or first 2 reads in their progressions. I think he's an underrated runner. He's strong. He's got some stop-start quickness to him. It's going to help him move the chains. He's not as dynamic as Lance, Fields, or Lawrence. And I didn't talk much about Lance's running, but that dude's strong. When I mentioned Steve McNair, I should say that's kind of enough when you talk about a guy who could run with power and could make the first man miss. And Lance has that, but Ehlinger also is a guy who, certainly can, move the chains and get first downs for you if he has to break the pocket. And his accuracy is something you want to see him work on in the deeper reaches. In the vertical game, he has what I call area code accuracy. It's enough for the receiver to make an athletic play on the ball, but it's not where Bill Walsh is going to, it's the old story of Bill Walsh telling Mike Holmgren, don't tell Jerry Rice or don't tell Joe Montana that was a good throw unless it hits him in that perfect square where we want it to be, as opposed to just the fact that Jerry Rice was able to reach and catch it. And Ehlinger has a little bit more area code accuracy than pinpoint accuracy at this point. His footwork and release motion, they need to be tightened up a little bit to help that accuracy. He tends to overshoot, his vertical routes. But the good thing is that it's a consistent issue where his accuracy is. It's not like, a guy like Carson Wentz coming out of school, as good as a quarterback as he is, was a type of guy that you couldn't really get he couldn't get a barometer on. He'd either be like on one play, throw it too long, the other play, throw it way too short. And you could see that he has the arm, but the Eagles did a great job of saying, you know what, we're going to limit his drops. We're going to limit him to, a pistol type of offense as good as he was in college. But in the pros, we find, shorten those drops, let him get it out quick. He's going to be pinpoint accurate within that 30-yard range. Anything more than that, it's more of him scrambling around to create more time and then maybe throwing it over the head of the defense where you don't have to be pinpoint accurate as much, especially at the distances of over 30, 35 yards. But, Ehlinger is a guy that I think he has the skill to move downfield, to throw on the move downfield. He just has to refine the accuracy there as well. And he just needs to be a little bit better at sniffing out blitzes pre-snap. But, this is someone that I think when the offense is backed up in its own territory, Ehlinger is, someone that I think just has to get a little bit better at his management of the game. But we'll see how he progresses this year because he's progressed pretty well each season as it's gone on.
You mentioned earlier, Matt, some Georgia guys. It's funny. I know I've met both these young men. Jamie Newman, who's a Wake Forest grad transfer. I did the Wake Forest Rice game last year. He's impressive. I mean, his physique he is put together, runs well, throws well. And then JT Daniels, kind of very different. I met him in high school. He skipped his senior year of high school. He left after his junior year of high school to go to USC and then started right away. So he was not physically developed when I met him. I think it's interesting they're both at Georgia now. Which one of these guys do you think starts this year? Which one of these guys do you think is a better prospect?
I think Newman starts this year, but I think Daniels is the better prospect. Like right now, I look at Newman and you love the size, you love the aggression downfield. I mean, he's someone that really isn't afraid to let his receivers go up and get it. And when he had guys like Sage Surratt and Scotty Washington, over at Wake Forest, he let those guys go up and do what they do best in terms of their athletic ability. And he's the type of guy who handles the pocket and the bodies around him well. I think he uses his size well as a runner. He has the burst and the movement to move the chains and make people miss, but also just run through guys. He's very good in the red zone as a runner. I think blitzes involving two defenders working maybe in layers or at different points can be hard for him to avoid. And his anticipation on timing routes can be a little bit better. And he stares down a lot of routes. But he's a guy that I think, watching him at Georgia is going to be fun. Being able to go down the field with some of their new, that freshman receiver they had last year who, can go up and win the ball. That's going to be a fun combination. But with Daniels, you watch him and just the footwork, really technically sound with the drops. He has that deceleration to set up fast. He has a really good feel for edge pressure, and his feet are really crisp. He can bounce. When you watch Tom Brady in the pocket, he kind of has that bounce to him and glides, but he can his feet never really leave the ground too high. So he's not bouncing up and down as he moves, and he's really smooth and fluid to be able to read things. And JT Daniels has that quality to his movement. So I really like how he kind of glides and moves, but he can plant and fire that ball fast as soon as he spots what he needs to see. And he has nice placement on his vertical throws. He doesn't have quite the arm that, say, Newman does or some of the top prospects do, but he can throw for distance. He puts a lot of air under the ball and throws with touch and placement, and he's aggressive And because he throws with anticipation and can do it early, he's really good at attacking downfield. And I don't think his arm is going to be a problem for him. And he's grown a little bit. He's 6'3", 210 now. At least that's what they've got him listed as. And you can see him adding a little bit of weight there. He's more of a chain mover as a runner. Good placement against high-low zone defenders. This was a guy that, was a terrific prospect at his high school. And out in California, I believe was Mater Dei, I believe that he was at. And, one of the top prospects there. I think long-term, he's going to be the better prospect than what Newman is. And he's going to be an interesting guy to watch. He's coming off an ACL tear. And if it weren't for the ACL tear and meniscus tear that he suffered after his first game last year, maybe we don't hear about a guy like Keaton Slovis. So, it's interesting to see how that works out, especially with him maybe in year 2 heading into Georgia, next year in 2021.
All right, I'm going to give you a couple more names, Matt. You can pick one. The guy that you think is most important to talk about. KJ Costello, the Stanford transfer at Mississippi State, Brock Purdy at Iowa State, or De'Aaron King, who was a Houston Cougar. He's now a Miami Hurricane.
I think the most interesting one to me, while people like Purdy and people like, Costello, especially going into Mike Leach's offense where that can be really productive, the guy who I think might surprise is De'Aaron King. And maybe it's because I'm a Miami guy at heart in some ways, but I think part of it is that when I watch him, he's a shorter guy with terrific athletic ability that a lot of people are going to say he's better off as a receiver because he's a big play guy, played some receiver at Houston. But, when you watch him, he has a quick high release. I think that he moves around the pocket really well, but at the same time, he'll stand in there and make the throws. He's a big play deep passer. He can scramble. He can break plays down the field like some of the top prospects can with his speed, but he's patient. He's patient against zone. He manipulates middle of the field defenders pretty well. I think he's very good at bringing the ball down and waits to set to that second or third window to throw the ball when something isn't immediately open that you don't always see with quarterbacks at this stage. He's a very promising red zone manager to me because he can be decisive, but he's also has that blend of knowing when to be patient and when to be decisive. He can be a little slower when it comes to checkdowns in terms of not slower. He needs to slow down a little bit more in terms of checkdowns. He can rush his process a little bit on some of those plays and not be as pinpoint accurate as you'd like to. And same with climbing the pocket. But Kyler Murray was kind of that way. So to me, if De'Aaron King has a good season in the ACC, playing for a new team, I think that people will start to warm up to him a little bit more. He could be a riser in this draft and not someone that people are just kind of writing off as a really good athlete who throws the ball well for a college player. I think he's a little more than that.
Well said, Matt. I did 2 of his games last year, the Oklahoma game and the Washington State game. Now, they lost both of them, and he was inconsistent throwing the football, but he is electric. I mean, he's kind of like a poor man's Kyler Murray is how I would describe it, although part of me would love to see what he would have been like if he was the Oklahoma quarterback, and if they had switched places like that. Good stuff, Matt. This is the kind of content you get at the Rookie Scouting Portfolio, Matt Waldman, RSP.com. If you're not subscribed, you're doing it wrong. It is the best guide out there. Absolutely love it and love talking with Matt every Monday. Next week, we will get into the wide receivers or the running backs. The week after that, we'll do the next. Man, it feels good to be talking about college football players, the next year's draft. Everybody keep your fingers crossed and do everything you can so that we actually get to watch these guys perform. Definitely also check out today's RossTucker football podcast. I had Dr. David Chow, longtime Chargers team doctor, on, asking him whether or not he really thinks Cam Newton will be 100% and his thoughts on the COVID-19 protocols. He said, you're more likely to get it as a football player the 6 days in the facility than you are on game day. I thought that was interesting. Highly encourage you to check out today's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Other than that, the keg is kicked. We are all tapped out.
Thanks for listening to the College Draft Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Fantasy Feast, Even Money, and The Business of Sports. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.